Hello and welcome back to another episode. So it's kind of weird. This is actually the second video in a row I'm doing on Kodak. So let's talk about Kodak, their new entry into the cryptocurrency. Okay, so it's called KodakCoin. And the way Kodak is positing this, it's really truly not a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. Okay, there's something that's part of this in the world of cryptography and information security. There's a hash algorithm associated with this cryptocurrency. It's been discovered to be a later offshoot. So when Kodak really calls it, there is a minor element of currency involved in this, but their claim to fame on this, where they plan on making their money, is the hash function, and I'll talk about that in very specific detail later. But let's please first let me build the foundation, right? And I think that's always important, right? Like when you build a house, you have to pour the concrete foundation, let it set, and come back in a few days, and you build your house. So I can't really talk about this intelligently unless I've built the background for you so that you can kind of understand where I'm taking this, okay? So let's go back TV show. It's just because what my claim is with Kodak is I think this is going to turn into a protection racket, modern day protection racket. So the Untouchables with Robert Stack, right? He played Elliot Ness from the FBI, and the time frame was the 1930s. I can't remember honestly if it was Chicago or New York. I think it was Chicago. But anyways, there were basically two scripts to every episode of the Untouchables. Number one, it was a speakeasy, right? It was during Prohibition, and there was some type of illicit alcohol, right? It was an underground bar and a gambling institution. So it either involved around a speakeasy or the other one was a protection racket. So let's talk about what a protection racket is. In the olden days, so let's say you had an old man owned a butcher shop or a bakery, let's say for example, and two young toughs come in and say, "Hey Pops, I think you need protection. You should really kind of pay us to protect you." And the old man says, "Oh guys, I've been here forever. I've never had any problem. I don't need any protection." And they say, "No Pop, really, I think you should pay us protection money and we'll keep you safe." And the old man again says, "Look, I've been here, guys, for a long time. I don't need any protection money." And the two guys say, "Okay, Pops, all right, we'll see you later." So they leave. The next day, long story short, the next day the guy comes in and his front window is smashed into his business. Shortly afterward, the two toughs come back in. "Oh, hey, Pops, I'm really sorry to see your window got smashed in. Gee, see, I told you should have really taken our protection money. We could have prevented this." So, right, we know it's a hustle. It's a scam, and it's called the protection racket. But it's a form of extortion. You extort money out of somebody, but by basically saying, "Look, if you don't pay me this protection money, I'm either going to smash your window in, or even worse, I'll come around and break your fingers. I'm going to do something to you until you start paying me money." It's called a protection racket, and it's a form of extortion. Let's fast forward many years to the early 1990s, and something maybe you're more familiar with, which would be domain name squatting. Right, and I'll never forget, this is so funny, General Motors. If you were to type in generalmotors.com in the URL back in 1992, 93, the website came up and it showed this guy on his bicycle. He had like this bicycle, and he says, "Hi, my name is General Motors." So what happened was, people who were skilled in the internet, before corporations got skilled, the people engaged in this domain name squatting. So they would go ahead and register all these famous brands like General Motors and so forth. They would register the site and they would squat on it, and they would hold it hostage to General Motors or whoever. And they'd say, "Hey, look, if you want your domain name, you have to pay me to get it back. You have to pay me $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, and I'll sell you back your own domain name." And that's a form of extortion. It's illegal now, you can't do that, but in the early days when it was the Wild West on the internet, people were doing that quite regularly. And I'll give you a legacy example, and it still exists today. I have been conditioned for forever, when I want to go to ESPN, I'll type in espn.go.com. Because what happened in the early days, somebody had squatted ESPN and was holding it hostage to sell it back to ESPN. ESPN got smart, and they just reserved the name go.com, go.com. And they built ESPN on the front of it as a subdomain. So it was subdomain ESPN, main domain go.com. And if you go to this day, if you go to Whois and you see who Go is registered to, it's registered to Disney because Disney owns ESPN. So that's a legacy that's still in place from like 1992, 1993. So that's 25 years later, these legacy squatting, it's still present because, again, I've been conditioned to type in espn.go.com instead of just espn.com. So we still have legacy vestiges of this squatting still around. So now let's talk. That's the foundation. That's the foundation of old 1930s and 1990s variations on the theme of either protection or extortion. Okay. Now 2018, there's a new form of extortion, and I think Kodak is going to engage in it through this KodakCoin. But here's the function. So here's where I'm going with the photo. So Kodak is trying to position itself to be the modern day ICANN or Whois, but strictly in the context of photography. I think with this KodakCoin, and I think it's brilliant, really. It's brilliant on Kodak's part, but it's going to go dark. It's going to go rogue. And here's what I mean by that. They're going to position themselves to be the central authority of photography, photo ownership. So here's how it works. One of the side products of cryptocurrency, it's a hash function. So now you can actually try this at home if you get the hash software. So let's say you have and I'll show you how to work it. So let's say you have a large Word document, but for this, you can apply this to photos too, but I'm saying to keep it simple, if you want to take a Word document, a big Word document, you run the hash function against the Word document. And if it's like a SHA-1 hash, it's going to generate like a 160-bit stream of characters, and that's your hash, right? It's basically like a serial number. Reopen that document and just take one period anywhere in the document, shift it one place to the left, either one letter or one word to the left. Close the document and rerun the hash function against the Word document, and you'll see the stream that comes back is a totally different hash because it detected a change in the document, and therefore the hash that's generated is totally different. Reopen the document yet another time, put the period back in its original place where it originally was, rerun the hash, and you'll find the hash is exactly as it was in the first trial. So the first and third trials should generate the exact same hash because you restored the period to its original position. And that's how a hash works. Now, in the context, here's where I think Kodak is going to take this. So if you're a photographer and you want to protect your work, you submit your photo to Kodak, and they're going to run this hash against your photo. It's going to generate 160, or it could be 200, whatever. I don't know how many strings, right? Because it all depends on how strong the hash is. It's going to generate this serial number. So what Kodak could do is they could include it with a random number generator to make sure that no two photos ever generate the same hash. Is they can take your hash, combine it with a random number generator, and produce a unique serial number. Okay, so I'm trying to build this road. It's kind of complicated, but bear with me. So I think what Kodak is going to do right now, when you right-click a photo, you find the ownership in Properties. You go to Properties, and the third tab over, what is the third tab? It's called Details. So you go in the details and you find the ownership. What I think Kodak is going to do is going to position itself to a point where if you right-click on a photo in the future, you're not going to find ownership in the properties. There's going to be a separate entry when you right-click. One of the lines is going to say, it's going to have the little Kodak logo. I really believe this. It's going to be the little red and yellow K, right? The red K against the yellow background. It's going to say, see ownership information, see Kodak registry information. So you go in there and it'll show you basically who owns the photo. Now, here's where the protection racket comes in. The protection racket is, what if you don't register your photo? So somebody's going to see your photo on Flickr or some other website, see it on the web, because you've hung it there, you've hung it on Flickr or whatever, right? They're going to right-click the photo, see Kodak ownership information, and you go there and it's going to say this photo is not registered with Kodak, and which is code for you can squat on it. You can claim it as your own. So this is what people are going to do. So they're going to steal your photos. So if somebody sees a photo, they're going to submit it to Kodak and get it registered. So the moral of the story is the way Kodak is going to hold you hostage is you say, pay us and register your photo, or have somebody else steal it. If you hang it online, somebody's going to take it and squat on it, and in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of Kodak, they're the rightful owner because you neglected to register your photo. It's your fault. You should have registered it. Don't cry over spilled milk, because you had your opportunity to register it and you failed to do so because you were a cheap Charlie and you didn't want to register your photo. Now somebody else owns it. So this is a problem, because in the old days we just put a PNG on it, right? We created a watermark. It was a PNG. You open your photo, you put your watermark on the photo, and you save it. And your watermark is on there showing your ownership. Well, this is a new age. It's a digital age. And Kodak has found a way to kind of defeat. So the old watermark, your old PNG, is no longer in play. That's been antiquated now by this new digital hash function. So here's how Kodak is going to pitch it. So what Kodak is saying is, you register your photo. Once it's registered, there's going to be some kind of embed into the actual code or something where they're going to be able to track it through web crawlers. So you register your photo, and if it's ever stolen by somebody, let's say you took a landscape photo and some local nursery in San Francisco, California lifted your photo and they got it on their website. Well, Kodak's crawlers can, because it's right, there's code running behind the photo, it can detect that this Acme nursery in San Francisco, California is lifted your photo and they're using it on their website. They alert you. This is how it's supposed to work in theory. Kodak alerts you that your photo is being used improperly. There's been a copyright violation, copyright infringement. So you can reach out to the nursery and say, hey, look, Kodak has alerted me that you're using my photo. Now, we can do this one of two ways. You can either remove the photo, or you can pay a small royalty. And then at that point, you can engage with the owner about how much per month that the owner is going to pay you to use your photo. It can be something small. If it's a little mom and pop nursery, it could be like $5 a month, right? It doesn't have to be this absurd, hugely amount of money. It can just $5, $7 a month. You can use my photo, just pay me $5 a month. That's all I'm asking. So it doesn't have to be mega money involved with this. So in the case of this flower shop or this florist or nursery, whatever, so let's talk about now the financial piece. So we've covered the function, right? The hash. So now the algorithm rather, but now let's talk about the actual cryptocurrency portion of the transaction. So what Kodak might be trying to set itself up as is almost, think of it as almost like a PayPal. So you have the timestamp and the repository, right, and the serial number. So that's one aspect of the photo. So let's say you do agree, you and the owner of the nursery agree that your royalty is going to be $5 per month, which is nothing, right? But again, let's see, it's on volume. Like say you can make it up on volume. So what Kodak would do is they'll set themselves up to be the financial facilitator of the transaction through the currency, through the KodakCoin. Because you're already there, you already got the serial number and stuff in the hash. So they say, well, we'll just go ahead and facilitate the financial transaction. So if you and the nursery owner agree to $5 per month, our cut is going to be 4% or 5%. I'm sure Kodak is going to want 4% or 5% of the transaction, just like a credit card company or anybody else. They're going to want 4% or 5% off the top. So if you agree to $5 per month, if it's 4%, Kodak gets 20 cents per month. It doesn't sound like a lot, and it really isn't. But when you add it up, when you add up all the different transactions that Kodak is going to be processing per month, it's going to come up to real money. And if it's 5%, it's 25 cents. 25 cents per month for one photo, one single photograph on some florist website in San Francisco, California, 25 cents per month. But again, I'm talking volume. When you do hundreds of thousands and possibly even millions of photographs. Now, if Kodak can tie this in successfully with their KodakCoin and they become like a PayPal and they start facilitating the financial transaction of the piece, that's where they're going. So they're making their money on both ends. You got to pay them. You're going to have to pay them to register the photo and get this serial number, right? This hash function and turns into a serial number. So you pay them there, and they're going to get you on the back end for the facilitating the financial transaction of the person paying you the royalty every month. So that's the theory. That's the spirit of how Kodak is pitching this, is so that they can alert you and then you can get royalties off your photo if somebody lifts it. But that's the clean version, and I believe it's much dirtier than that, again, because it's a modern spin on protection. Because what Kodak is telling you is if somebody steals your photo, don't cry. Don't cry because you didn't register it. You failed to register it. It's your problem now. Okay. So in another. So here's where the hash function comes in. So that generates this 160-bit stream, or then it becomes a unique serial number. So let's say somebody tries to be smart. And part of this, and I forgot, part of this is a timestamp. So there's a centralized repository. Kodak is going to own this. This is what they're setting themselves up to be, is the central repository of all photos. So let's say you register your photo on January 10 of 2018. Now somebody tries to be slick, and they'll change just a very slight color somewhere, or they'll crop. They'll come in for a very small crop. Very mild crop, rather. It's still the same photo, but it's a mild crop. Well, it's changed the content of the photo. And if they submit it to Kodak for registration, it's going to fool the system. It's going to fool the hash because it's been altered. Kodak can, in theory, generate a new hash. It'll be a new hash, a new serial number, and they can award that photographer ownership. Now, here's what you do as the original owner. You say, hey, look, it's clear that the person just cropped in on my photo. My timestamp, because Kodak's got it in their database. They even have, you can even have it like for Wall Street trades. You can have it to 1/10,000th or 1,000th or 1/10,000th of a second. When the timestamp, when it hits the database, the time of transaction, the time of execution can go down to 1,000th or 10,000th of a second. But it's not really that important for photos. All you need to show is the date, basically. Look, I registered this photo on January 10 at 9:38 a.m. It's clear this person took my photo, did a mild crop on it, and their timestamp is January 24. It's clear that I'm the rightful owner because my timestamp is January 10, their timestamp is January 24. It's the same photo. So Kodak can intervene and then sanction or penalize the person who tried to lift your photo. So then you're declared the rightful owner of the photo. So it can kind of work in theory, but I'm getting back to my point where it's still a mild form of protection. It's a protection racket. So let me cover two things, how I think they're going to get themselves in a sweet spot with the powers that be. So I think they're going to reach out at first as a trial basis. They want to ingratiate themselves with the establishment. So they're going to reach out to Annie Leibovitz, and they're going to reach out to the estates. They're going to reach out to the Center of Creative Photography in Arizona. They're going to reach out to the estates of, well, Ansel Adams' work is already at Center for Creative Photography, but they're going to reach out to the estates of W. Eugene Smith and Gary Winogrand and Richard Avedon and so forth and so on. And here's how they're going to pitch it. We want to protect your work. We as Kodak, we want to help make sure that we always protect the legacy of these famous photographers. So you submit your photos to us, and we're gonna run this hash function against the photo. We're gonna issue you a serial number so that the work is protected from here on out. You're gonna be one of the very first ones in this new repository in the database, right? But we're gonna do it for free. It's totally on the house. We're gonna protect your work. You're gonna get your serial number. Okay, that's how they're going to build the bridge to the establishment. But that's the establishment. Now, but for every working pro who's like a wedding photographer or whatever, portrait photographer, and us who shoot just on weekends, we're going to have to pay. So what happens is we're going to have to pay Kodak to register this photo, get our hash, get our serial number, and then we'll be good to go. But again, it's a mild form of protection. It's a mild form of extortion. Either register your photo, pay us, or suffer the consequence. And here's the salt in the wound. And I just love this because I can see it coming. I can absolutely see this coming. Now, back in the days of Ma Bell, when phone numbers were unlisted, you had to pay a little premium to have your phone number unlisted, right? That was a premium to take yourself out of the database, out of the repository. Fast forward later, if you've ever registered a website, right, your name and your contact information are there on the page. Your physical address to your home and your phone number are there as part of the contact information. The way they get a few extra dollars out of you, like when you register through GoDaddy, they'll suppress that information, but you got to pay a little. You got to throw a little money, extra money into the pot, sweeten the deal, and they'll obscure your actual personal contact information so that you can't get some psycho at your house in the middle of the night trying to kill you, right? So do I want a psycho at my house trying to kill me at 3 a.m. or do I want to pay GoDaddy extra $3 a month to smother my personal contact information, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of makes sense, right? So, but this is what Kodak is going to do too. Kodak is going to engage in this very same thing. So every time you register a photo, because it's going to be off of a credit card, and your contact information, right? When you go to pay for anything, they want to make sure you're their legitimate card holder. So when you register a photo, your personal contact, when you right click a photo and it says see ownership information, there's all your contact information, to include your street address and your phone number. But here's what Kodak's going to do. Oh, you don't want your personal information under the properties? We can take care of that. Just pay us a little extra and we'll smother it, right? We'll just make sure that we don't put it, but it's going to cost you extra. So I'm like, they got both angles covered, right? This is where we're going in this digital age. Is not only are you going to have to protect your photo, they're going to extract some extra money out of you to smother the right click under the properties to hide your personal information. I'm like, wow. They got every angle covered. I guarantee you they're going to have every angle covered. So that's what this KodakCoin is all about. But again, I'm repeating myself now ridiculously, and I'm going to end this video. But it's about extorting from you some money so that somebody else doesn't squat on your photo and claim it as your own. It's the 1930s Chicago tough, somebody smashing in your front window, repackaged for 2018. That's all this is. It's a protection racket, and we'll see how this shakes out. We'll see where it goes, but I'm pretty confident that what I'm talking about is going to play out. It's going to turn into a soft protection racket. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time, and have a wonderful day.